Ladies and gentlemen, imagine standing at the edge of a forest so still, so breathtakingly beautiful, that you believe you could lose yourself in it forever. Now imagine chasing that beauty so far, so relentlessly, that the very thing that inspired you begins to consume you. This is not just a story about one man, but a warning for anyone who has ever reached too far, reminding us that passion, without balance, can turn light into shadow. The pursuit of perfection is one of the most powerful forces that can shape a human life. It comes from a place deep within the heart, a yearning not to settle for the ordinary, but to elevate every moment into something remarkable. When someone sets their eyes on perfection, they are not content with mediocrity, nor do they wish to simply survive. Instead, they long to refine, polish, and shape their world until it reflects the beauty and harmony they believe life should hold. This pursuit can manifest in many ways, from the love of art and music to the quest for spiritual harmony, from the desire to be at one with nature to the hunger for mastery over a craft. At its core, it is an attempt to align the inner world of the soul with the outer world of existence, creating a seamless connection between what one feels and what one sees. In the story that inspires us here, the character's longing for perfection was rooted in the natural beauty surrounding him. He looked at the stillness of the forest, the flowing of rivers, and the gentle symphony of birds. And he believed that by attuning himself to such wonders, he could achieve a higher state of life. For him, perfection was not simply about wealth, recognition, or achievements as the world often defines it. Instead, it was about absorbing the essence of beauty so completely that nothing imperfect could enter his mind or spirit. To many, this may sound noble and even inspiring. After all, we often speak of striving for excellence, aiming high, and pursuing our dreams with intensity. The character embodies this same drive, only he placed his perfection not in material gain, but in the harmony of nature and the aesthetic ideals he cherished. This drive toward perfection is something we all carry, though in varying degrees. A painter who refuses to stop working on a canvas until every brushstroke sings in unison is chasing perfection. A musician who repeats a melody countless times until the notes align with the emotion in their heart is pursuing perfection. A thinker who cannot rest until their ideas fit seamlessly together is doing the same. There is undeniably greatness in such devotion. It pushes humanity forward, leading to timeless works of art, scientific breakthroughs, and cultural treasures. The pursuit of perfection has always been the spark that ignites the extraordinary. Yet, while it is a noble pursuit, it also carries within it a subtle danger. Perfection can be a horizon that moves further away the closer one approaches. The more someone demands from life, the more elusive satisfaction becomes. The character in our narrative embodies this tension. His pursuit was not casual or balanced, it was absolute. He immersed himself so fully into the ideal of perfection that he wanted nothing less than pure harmony, unmarred by flaws or interruptions. In doing so, he began to step away from the natural imperfections that give life its depth. He turned away from relationships, from the complexities of human connection, from the imperfections of daily life, believing that perfection lay elsewhere, far beyond the touch of others. This unrelenting focus reveals something important about the pursuit of perfection. It is both a gift and a test. It inspires, but it can also isolate. It creates beauty, but it can also blind. When perfection is seen as an attainable end, rather than a guiding star, it traps the seeker in endless striving. Instead of finding peace, they discover restlessness. Instead of embracing life's balance, they slip into obsession. The character's journey shows us how a noble pursuit can transform into a consuming fire when balance is lost. However, even in its dangers, the pursuit of perfection teaches us profound lessons. It reminds us that beauty is worth seeking, that excellence should be our aim, that settling for less than our best diminishes our spirit. At the same time, it warns us that perfection must be pursued with humility and awareness of life's natural boundaries. To seek harmony is wonderful, but to believe we can eliminate imperfection entirely is to deny the essence of being human. True perfection may not be in the flawless, but in the way we embrace both the polished and the raw, the complete and the incomplete, the light and the shadow. The danger of losing balance begins when a person takes a noble pursuit and pushes it beyond its natural limits. In life, balance is the thread that holds together every aspect of existence. Too much light blinds the eyes, just as too much darkness hides the path. Too much hunger leads to destruction, while too much indulgence breeds weakness. In the same way, even when one seeks something as beautiful as harmony or perfection, stepping too far into it, without recognizing the limits of human nature, can turn a blessing into a curse. The story that inspires this reflection captures exactly this danger. It shows us how the line between a healthy pursuit and an unhealthy obsession is thinner than we realize. The character, in his hunger for a life perfectly aligned with beauty and nature, allowed himself to drift away from balance, and in doing so, he began to unravel the very harmony he longed for. Balance is not a passive state. It is an active art, requiring awareness and humility. Think of a tightrope walker, carefully placing each foot in front of the other. They cannot lean too far to the left or to the right, or they will fall. The same applies to human pursuits. A person who works endlessly, without rest in the name of ambition, eventually collapses from exhaustion. Another who refuses to work at all in the name of ease wastes their potential and becomes stagnant. Both extremes are destructive, though they arise from opposite directions. The character we are reflecting on fell into a similar trap. His devotion to beauty and perfection could have been a guiding light, but by allowing it to consume him completely, he neglected the natural imperfections of life and the grounding influence of human connection. The danger here lies in forgetting that life itself is a composition of contrasts. Just as music depends not only on sound, but also on silence, just as painting depends not only on color, but also on space, so too does a meaningful life depend on balance between passion and restraint. When someone tilts too far into their pursuit, they create an imbalance that eventually collapses. The character sought to live fully in harmony with nature, but in doing so, he began to drift away from the very human ties that might have kept him grounded. His devotion to an ideal of beauty blinded him to the beauty in ordinary imperfections. The laughter of others, the unpredictability of relationships, the resilience of the human spirit in the face of flaws. Losing balance also means losing perspective. When a person narrows their vision so tightly onto one goal, they stop seeing the wider picture of life. For the character, beauty became everything, leaving no room for contradiction, no space for imperfection. This narrowing of focus can make a person forget that true harmony includes both the refined and the raw. To erase one side of the equation is to destroy the whole. Imagine a musician who insists on playing only high notes, refusing to acknowledge the depth of the lower tones. The melody may begin beautifully, but soon it becomes unbearable, incomplete, and shallow. In the same way, the character's attempt to reach for pure perfection without balance robbed him of the full spectrum of life's melody. The lesson that emerges from this is clear. Balance is not an optional extra, it is essential for survival and for meaning. Without it, even the noblest goal can become destructive. The danger of losing balance is not only about personal downfall, but about cutting oneself off from the richness of life. By stepping too far into his ideals, the character placed himself in isolation. He created a fragile existence, where the slightest disruption could shatter his carefully built world. Life, however, is not fragile. It is resilient, but only when we allow it to be whole, embracing both sides of the coin. There is also a spiritual dimension to balance. Many traditions and philosophies teach that excess of any kind, even in virtue, leads to ruin. Courage without caution becomes recklessness. Generosity without wisdom becomes waste. Passion without restraint becomes obsession. In the same way, harmony without acceptance of imperfection becomes a hollow illusion. The character, in stepping too far, teaches us that one cannot master life by eliminating its rough edges. Instead, balance requires us to welcome both the light and the shadow, both the polished and the unrefined. Only then can one truly stand firm, no matter how the winds of life may blow. Isolation versus connection is one of the most powerful themes that shape human existence, and in the story that inspires this reflection, it becomes the very turning point of the character's journey. Every human soul longs for peace, but the way in which peace is sought can either lead to flourishing or to downfall. The character believed that withdrawing from others and immersing himself completely into the beauty of nature and ideals of perfection would bring him the harmony he desired. He saw solitude as a path to clarity, a way to strip away distractions and interruptions. For a time, it seemed to work. Alone, he could admire the stillness of trees, listen to the rhythm of flowing waters, and feel a sense of purity that human interactions often complicate. In those moments, isolation felt like freedom, as if he had stepped outside the messy imperfections of the world into something serene and untouched. But while isolation can bring temporary peace, it carries hidden costs that grow heavier the longer one avoids connection. A person in solitude may believe they are closer to truth, but truth is often sharpened by interaction, by the clash of ideas, by the laughter, struggles, and sorrows shared with others. The character's decision to turn away from human connection meant turning away from the very mirrors that might have reflected his excesses back to him. Friends, family, or even casual acquaintances often serve as anchors, reminding us of balance and keeping our feet on the ground when we drift too far. By isolating himself, he removed those anchors, leaving himself vulnerable to the pull of obsession. Human connection is not always easy. It demands patience, compromise, and acceptance of flaws, but in those imperfections lies growth. A conversation with a friend might challenge our ideas. A disagreement with a loved one might reveal blind spots we could never see alone. A moment of shared laughter reminds us that joy often comes in small, unplanned fragments. The character, in choosing isolation, rejected these gifts in favor of a vision of pure beauty. But beauty without shared meaning loses its depth. A sunrise may be magnificent when viewed alone, but when shared with another soul, its significance multiplies. The warmth of connection amplifies the beauty of the world, while isolation tends to shrink it into something fragile and easily shattered. Isolation also creates an illusion of control. Alone, a person can shape their environment exactly as they wish, but life was never meant to be completely controlled. It thrives in unpredictability, in the surprises and interruptions that come with other people. The character sought to build a life, untouched by such disturbances. Yet in doing so, he denied himself the resilience that connection fosters. People who walk through life with others learn to bend without breaking, to adapt to the unexpected, to grow stronger through shared burdens. In contrast, a solitary pursuit of perfection often collapses at the first disruption because it lacks the strength that comes from shared human experience. The contrast between isolation and connection also touches on the deepest human need, the need to belong. No matter how strong or independent someone appears, every person carries within them the desire to be seen, heard, and understood. Connection fulfills that need in ways that solitude never can. The character's decision to isolate himself may have seemed like a rejection of society's imperfections, but it was also a rejection of his own humanity. By distancing himself from others, he cut off not only their influence, but also the part of himself that longs for relationship. A soul can only deny that hunger for so long before it begins to wither. This story reminds us that connection does not weaken the pursuit of beauty or perfection. It strengthens it. Through others, we are reminded of our limits and our possibilities. Through others, we find the courage to keep striving and the wisdom to know when to rest. Through others, we discover that perfection is not in flawless solitude, but in the messy, unpredictable dance of shared lives. Isolation may seem like a path to purity, but it often leads only to fragility. Connection, with all its challenges, leads to resilience and growth. The illusion of control is one of the most subtle yet powerful traps that a human being can fall into. It arises when someone begins to believe that life, nature, and even destiny can be bent entirely to their will. On the surface, this belief feels empowering. It gives a sense of mastery, a feeling that through enough effort, discipline, or vision, one can shape reality exactly as desired. The character in the story we reflect upon lived within this illusion. He believed that by immersing himself in beauty, harmony, and perfection, he could control not only his surroundings, but even the very flow of life itself. For him, control meant erasing imperfection, bending nature to serve his vision of purity, and standing as the master of his world. At first glance, the desire for control seems natural. Every person seeks some measure of it. We arrange our schedules, plan our futures, manage our work, and even structure our relationships to create predictability. This is not inherently wrong. Control provides a sense of safety and order in a chaotic world. Without it, life would feel overwhelming, like a ship tossed on stormy seas without a rudder. The problem arises when the quest for control goes beyond the healthy boundaries of order and begins to push into the realm of domination and denial of reality. The character's belief that he could align his life so perfectly with beauty that no flaw or shadow could enter was exactly this kind of illusion. He thought that control could shield him from the unpredictability of existence. But in doing so, he blinded himself to the truth that unpredictability is not an enemy of life. It is part of its essence. The illusion of control often begins subtly. A person may succeed in one area and start to believe that success can be replicated in every other. For the character, the peace he felt in solitude and the harmony he saw in nature convinced him that he could extend that harmony endlessly. He mistook glimpses of beauty for ownership of beauty itself. The flaw in this belief is that nature and life are not static paintings we can frame and preserve. They are living, shifting realities that obey rhythms far greater than human will. Seasons change, storms arrive, accidents happen, and death touches every life. To think that one can control or avoid these forces is to deny the very truth of existence. This illusion can also become intoxicating. Control gives a sense of power, and power often blinds a person to their vulnerability. The character believed that by mastering his environment, he could transcend ordinary limitations. But in truth, the more he tightened his grip, the more fragile his life became. Like a glass vessel polished to perfection, his existence seemed flawless, but was easily shattered. The illusion of control deceives by offering security, but in reality, it often leaves a person more exposed. When the unexpected comes, and it always does, those who cling to control suffer the most, because they never prepared for what lay beyond their grasp. There is also a deeper lesson in this theme. Control can never coexist fully with freedom. To attempt to control every detail is to deny spontaneity, surprise, and the richness of uncertainty. The character's obsession with control left no room for life to surprise him, no space for the imperfections that give depth and meaning. Connection with others requires letting go of control, for no one can dictate another's heart. Growth requires letting go of control, for no one can script the exact lessons life will teach. Even joy requires surrender, for the most beautiful moments often arrive unplanned. By living under the illusion of control, the character denied himself the freedom to truly live. The greatest irony of the illusion of control is that it is often born from fear. Beneath the character's pursuit of harmony was the unspoken fear of chaos, of pain, of imperfection. Instead of facing those realities with courage, he tried to erase them by constructing a world where they did not exist. But erasing is not the same as overcoming. Life cannot be mastered by denial, only by acceptance. True strength does not come from controlling every detail, but from standing steady when the uncontrollable arrives. Storms cannot be stopped, but one can learn to bend like the tree and rise again when the wind passes. Death cannot be avoided, but one can live so deeply that its arrival holds no regret. Pain cannot be eliminated, but it can be endured and transformed. The story reminds us that the illusion of control is seductive, but empty. It whispers promises of security, while quietly eroding resilience. It promises mastery but delivers fragility. The character's downfall illustrates the cost of clinging too tightly to a vision of life stripped of unpredictability. To embrace life fully, one must release the illusion of control and instead cultivate adaptability, humility, and courage. Only then can one stand unshaken in a world that is, by its very nature, beyond complete control. The thin line between inspiration and destruction is one of the most fascinating truths about human passion. Every great achievement, every work of art, every discovery and invention has been born from inspiration. It is the spark that ignites the imagination and compels a person to reach beyond the ordinary. Yet, this very spark, when allowed to burn unchecked, can consume rather than illuminate. In the story that guides this reflection, the character's life demonstrates how easily inspiration can turn into obsession, and how the pursuit of something beautiful can, without balance, lead to ruin. He was inspired by the beauty of nature, the harmony of life, and the vision of perfection. But instead of nurturing that inspiration wisely, he allowed it to dominate every thought and every choice, until it became destructive. Inspiration is a powerful gift. It has lifted humanity to heights once thought impossible. It drives the artist to paint canvases that stir the soul, the poet to write words that echo through generations, the scientist to solve mysteries that once seemed unsolvable. It gives meaning and purpose to our lives. For the character, the inspiration he found in the world around him was real and profound. He saw beauty where others saw the ordinary, and he longed to live in complete harmony with it. At first, his pursuit was noble, even admirable. To be so deeply moved by beauty is to be alive in a way many people never experience. His inspiration could have been a source of wisdom and joy. But inspiration, when unchecked, begins to blur into something else. What begins as a guiding light can harden into an obsession. The danger lies in the intensity of devotion. A painter inspired to create may lose themselves so completely in the pursuit of perfection that they forget to eat or sleep. A leader inspired by a vision may push so hard that they sacrifice the very people they hoped to help. A thinker may become so fixed on one idea that they shut out all other truths. This is the fine line the character crossed. What started as inspiration to live beautifully turned into destruction when he demanded that every part of his life conform to his ideal of beauty, leaving no room for imperfection, for humanity, or for balance. This thin line exists because inspiration is emotional fuel. It gives energy, focus, and clarity, but like any fuel, it must be contained. Fire in a hearth warms and nourishes, but fire out of control consumes and destroys. The character's fire was allowed to spread unchecked. His inspiration, instead of guiding him, began to rule him. In that moment, inspiration transformed into obsession, and obsession has only one path. It narrows the world, cuts away balance, and eventually collapses upon itself. There is also a lesson here about perspective. Inspiration is meant to open the heart and expand vision. But when it is distorted into obsession, it does the opposite. It closes the heart to anything that does not align with the chosen ideal. The character closed himself off from human connection, from the unpredictability of life, from the very imperfections that make beauty meaningful. His inspiration for harmony blinded him to the truth that harmony requires contrast, just as music requires both melody and silence. By refusing to accept contradiction, he turned inspiration into destruction. The line is thin because it is often invisible until it is crossed. A person may not realize when their devotion shifts from healthy passion to unhealthy fixation. For the character, the shift was gradual, almost imperceptible. Each choice seemed justified. Each step seemed to bring him closer to his ideal, until suddenly he had gone too far, and the beauty he sought became the force of his undoing. This is why awareness is essential. To remain inspired without being consumed requires humility, self-reflection, and a willingness to accept limits. It means asking, is my pursuit still giving life, or is it beginning to take it away? The story illustrates that inspiration and destruction are not opposites, but twins that walk side by side. The same intensity that fuels greatness can also fuel ruin. What determines the outcome is balance, perspective, and the ability to step back. True inspiration should lead to growth, to connection, to deeper meaning. When it begins to isolate, to exhaust, or to blind, it is no longer inspiration, but destruction in disguise. The character's downfall shows us the cost of forgetting this distinction. Inspiration is a gift, but like every gift, it demands responsibility. It calls us to create, to strive, to elevate our lives, but it also calls us to remain grounded, to embrace imperfection, and to remember that beauty is not destroyed by flaws, but made more meaningful because of them. The thin line between inspiration and destruction is one each of us must walk carefully. When tended with care, inspiration lights the way forward. When left unchecked, It burns the very path beneath our feet. The lesson of moderation is one of the oldest and wisest truths passed down through human history, yet it remains one of the hardest to practice. From ancient philosophies to modern wisdom, the message has always been clear. Excess in any direction leads to imbalance, while moderation brings stability, peace, and fulfillment. In the story that serves as our reflection, the character's tragedy was born from the absence of moderation. His desire for beauty, harmony, and perfection was not in itself destructive. It became destructive only when he pursued it without limits, when he allowed it to dominate his life so completely that nothing else could exist alongside it. His downfall is not simply a warning against beauty or passion, but a reminder that even the noblest pursuit must be tempered by moderation, if it is to lead to life rather than ruin. Moderation does not mean mediocrity. It does not mean lowering one's standards or abandoning one's passions. Instead, it means holding passion with wisdom, keeping ambition balanced with humility, and allowing room for both intensity and rest. The character lacked this balance. He believed that only by immersing himself fully in perfection could he achieve true harmony, but in doing so, he denied himself the richness of life's natural rhythms. Just as day needs night, and joy is made meaningful by sorrow, passion too must be balanced by moderation, if it is to remain healthy. The wisdom of moderation lies in its ability to embrace the whole of life. It recognizes that extremes are seductive, but unsustainable. Too much work leads to exhaustion, too much rest to stagnation. Too much solitude breeds isolation, too much company overwhelms the soul. Too much indulgence corrupts, too much denial hardens. Moderation walks the middle path, drawing from both sides, without being consumed by either. The character's devotion to perfection could have been enriching if he had allowed moderation to guide him. He might have admired beauty without rejecting imperfection, cherished solitude without forsaking connection, sought harmony without denying the natural chaos of life. Instead, his extremity pushed him into a fragile world that collapsed under its own weight. There is also a profound humility in moderation. It is the recognition that human beings are not infinite, that our minds and bodies have limits, and that true greatness is not in denying those limits, but in honoring them. The character's pursuit of perfection without moderation was, at its heart, a refusal to accept human limitation. He wanted to rise above imperfection entirely, to live as though flaws and contradictions could be erased. But moderation reminds us that flaws are not enemies. They are teachers. They shape us, keep us grounded, and give depth to our achievements. Without moderation, the character sought to escape what he should have embraced, and in doing so, he lost the balance that sustains life. The lesson of moderation also teaches resilience. Life is unpredictable, full of changes and challenges that no one can fully control. A person who lives in extremes breaks easily when life does not conform to their vision, but a person who practices moderation bends without breaking. Just as a tree that grows too rigid in the wind will snap, while one that allows itself to sway survives the storm, moderation allows the human spirit to endure. The character's refusal of moderation left him fragile, unable to adapt when the weight of his pursuit pressed too heavily upon him. Had he allowed moderation to guide him, he would have been able to live with imperfection without losing himself to despair. What makes moderation so powerful is that it brings freedom, while extremes create chains. Chains of obsession, chains of fear, chains of fragility. Moderation allows one to live fully. It opens space for joy, for spontaneity, for connection. It does not demand perfection, but it makes room for beauty in both perfection and imperfection. It allows ambition without exhaustion, passion without destruction, solitude without isolation. It is not the denial of greatness, but the path to greatness that endures. The character's story shows what happens when moderation is abandoned. But it also points us back to the truth that moderation is the bridge between inspiration and sustainability, between passion and peace. The lesson of moderation is simple, yet profound. Everything in life, even the pursuit of the highest ideals, must be held with balance. Extremes blind us, but moderation clears our vision. Extremes weaken us, but moderation strengthens. Extremes isolate us, but moderation connects. By learning this lesson, one can walk the path of passion and beauty without falling into obsession, live with ambition without being consumed, and embrace both the light and the shadow without losing harmony. The character's fate serves as a reminder that moderation is not weakness but wisdom, not compromise but clarity, not limitation but freedom. The story we have reflected upon is more than just a tale of one man's journey. It is a mirror for all of us. It shows how the pursuit of beauty and perfection, when left without balance, can lead not to fulfillment but to loss. It warns us against the illusion of control, against the trap of isolation, and against the danger of letting inspiration harden into obsession. Yet at the same time, it offers us timeless lessons. The call to embrace connection, the reminder that life's imperfections are not flaws to be erased, but gifts that add depth, and the truth that moderation is the key to lasting harmony. To live fully is not to run to extremes, but to walk the path where passion and balance meet, where beauty is cherished, but never idolized, where strength is found not in denying our limits, but in accepting them with grace. The man who went too far teaches us that we need not go too far to find meaning. It is already here, in the balance of life itself. Like and subscribe to our channel Dream Chase to watch the next video.